Wild and Woolly Ozarks, episode number 24, The Old Language of the Ozarks. Gather up the kids and the old folks. Shut down the contraptions and dim the lights. Put away your pocket-sized magic lantern shows. Close your eyes and listen. It's time to strike off on the paths less traveled, down dark trails through the hills and hollers, along the riverbanks and into the brush. Hear tales of things forgotten get told. Join me as we venture into the wild and woolly Ozarks. I'm your native guide and host, Champ Heron. Welcome back, gentle people. Thank you for once again finding your way to our green little hillside on the banks of Dry Creek. Pull up a chair and rest yourself. It's the time of year where there's still a breeze, but you need a little shade. We've had a God's plenty rain the last few days. Of course, I'll be hollering about it later when it's dry. We all know how that goes. I've got some beautiful flowers growing. I've got beautifully staked tomatoes that thankfully not a one of them washed away. And I've got some little white-faced calves. So follow Heron Dry Creek Farm over on Facebook or check out what we've got over there. When you can, before I start here, and I always sputter and think of a better way to go once I get started. I guess it's something we work on as we grow. But I spend a lot of time thinking about the local history of the Ozarks, characters past, long since, or events that have long since taken place, or in the case of legends, maybe events that never happened at all. It's a lovely, spicy, wonderful, intriguing place to live and to explore and to study. And a lot of times we get so hung up on whether or not there were giants buried in a cave near Springfield, or whether or not DeSoto left a mountain or a cave full of silver or gold on a mountaintop, or whether or not the Yokums had them a mine and made dollars or not. Those are all legends. We think about those, and we think about ghosts and bank robberies and gunfights and all this sort of stuff, but we don't often think about the everyday things, the simple things, the common things. We do in like the handicrafts of our ancestors. It's a Silver Dollar City tour in a way, kind of get a glimpse maybe of how people lived. But a lot of times we think about music, or we think about quilts, or we think about cookery, or storytelling, or any of the other of 100 million things that come up that we lop into the bin of Ozark culture. But language, we don't think that much about language. I don't think the everyday Ozarker considers how they speak, or where it came from, or how it's changed, even in my short lifetime. I kind of consider myself fortunate to have experienced the very last of the children and grandchildren, maybe great-grandchildren, of the pioneers or first settlers of the Ozarks, those who'd heard those stories firsthand. I only wish my attention span had been longer. Isn't that always the way? Too quick old, too late smart. I butchered that, I think. I don't think that's right. It's a German proverb. What does it really matter? But that was sort of the last breath of the pioneers. Now, there will never be a colorful yarn spinner like my old neighbor Willie D. Smith, who could cut his name in a mule's butt with a whip, or a local history database like Garland Calloway, who could produce dates of obscure local events better and quicker than anything electronic at the time. Few will equal the storytelling ability of great uncles Hub, Merle, and Lowell Rader from Shannon County, Missouri. Among these first, I heard of Dornick's and Fortnent to plant a black garden, or to black garden. I heard that women grinded with other women at the grocery store. Something long left out, and I understood that Frigidaire and Winchester were catch-all terms. Some time ago, I had the wonderful opportunity to meet today's guest, Danette House, who joins us for a topic about the language of the Ozarks, something I think we're going to find enormously interesting. Danette, welcome to the Wild and Woolly Ozarks. Thank you for joining us. Well, everybody's got an origin story. Why don't you tell us how you got into saving words and collecting stories and wisecracks and euphemisms, and how that all took off for you?
Ozarks, and you can't get much deeper than West Plains, Missouri. Or Ozark County, Gainesville. I live there too. And so I worked with her, and one of my first storytelling endeavors that I did was English language and the Ozarks language. And so that's how I got into it, and I just started studying all the books I could find on all the well-known writers of Ozark language. There was one that one of my cousins had written that I really liked, and I used it too. So that's how I kind of started. I've been doing it since 22, so I haven't been in it really all that long. But like I say, I have been a Ozark speaker for about 63 years because I'm 65. So I have heard all kinds of language. I've heard, Great American Standard, which I was supposed to teach in English, to the most hillbillified language that you could ever imagine. And I really enjoy digging into it.
Well, what was the first? Of course, you grew up here. It's not like you came here from Vermont and became enchanted with Ozark folk speak and decided to start off on this. You did grow up in it. What's your first memory of something that just wasn't what your friends were saying when you heard somebody say it?
Well, my first memory of that is my family, more than anything, because as I got older and through the public school education, I had a fairly good idea of how you speak in public, and I noticed that my grandpa and later my father-in-law had just a weird Ozarks language, nearly all of their own. And so I got really interested in that and started listening to people and just asking people what they remember too. Every time I do this talk, somebody tells me a new phrase or two at least.
Well, what were some of the words you remember as a young person?
Well, I remember my mom telling me about her dad, and this was when I was grown, but she said he would always try to embarrass her in front of her friends, and he would say things like I clumb a tree, and wassail, like wrestle, but wassail, and chimbly. That was another one that
chimbly.
That he was notorious for. And she said it made her so mad because, she was trying to get away from that Ozarks speak at the time. It would have been back in the 60s, when she was a young lady. And she said he just did that on purpose. And then when I got married, I honestly married into a family. Probably, I don't know if there's any family on earth that speaks Ozarkian more than they do. My father-in-law was just absolutely, he could not talk in American Standard English. He just, wouldn't. I never heard him talk like, he always had some kind of word you didn't know or phrase, or he would always throw a story in. And so those two people are really the ones that I thought of when I started. And I wanted to know, where did our language come from? Why is it different in the Ozarks?
My first one was, I'll warrant you. So everything I started off, every sentence was, I'll warrant you.
Warrant?
Yeah.
Guarantee?
Yeah, used like an Elizabeth courtier, Elizabethan courtier, how do you say it?
Courtier? I don't know. Courtier.
One of them fancy folks that hung around the Queen a lot, that talked better than me.
Yeah. And I've just grown up hearing it all over the place. Mm-hmm. I mean, West Plains is kind of a place that there are a lot of older people, and they all came from rural backgrounds, and they are used to saying and hearing a lot of the old phrases. And I will find myself slipping into some now and then, and we can go over those in a little while. What I wanted to find out was, what makes us different in the Ozarks than anywhere around? Our geography is totally different than anywhere around us. The way that the plates buckled up and the mountains formed. And so I got to looking on maps, on dialect maps, when I was teaching, and they would show about 6 or 7 different dialects, which isn't nearly enough for the United States. But American dialect, there's about 30 of them. And examples are New York, New York, New England, Cajun, Midwestern, California, Southern. And a dialect is the way that you speak. Everybody has one. And some are more noticeable than others. Like, I'll go on vacation and somebody will say, "Where are you from?" And I always say, "Well, guess. Listen to my voice and guess." And they'll say, "You're Southern," but I can't tell where Southern, and then I tell them it's the Ozarks of Missouri. And linguists have always had a terrible time putting us on the map correctly in the Ozarks. They have called the Ozarks the Upper Southern language, the South Midland, which those are two totally different things, Midwestern, Middle West, Midlands, and South. I saw Missouri Apex, and I kind of like that because it brought the South up just a little ways and caught part of the Ozarks. And Tennessean, I saw that one time. Country, I just saw country accents. And then I saw on one map, I actually saw a little area that I knew we were in, and I looked it up on the key, and it said the language of the Beverly Hillbillies, that is what we speak in the Ozarks. And, that was not only inaccurate, it was kind of insulting. And that was a map from the Washington Post. And so I have been on kind of a crusade. What?
What do you expect?
From the Post?
Yeah, what do you expect from a pig but a grunt?
So I've been on a mission to try to figure out what we are exactly, especially in this area, and where did it come from, and how are we different than South? We're a lot like South. We're more like the South than anywhere else.
One of the things that I've noticed, and undoubtedly it's going to affect speech or language or cultural references, stories, etc. The first wave of, and you and I were speaking about this earlier, off camera. The first wave into the Ozarks is primarily from the south, and they aren't, you know, planters with 100 hounds and thoroughbred horses and little red
No.
jackets. They're everybody who's displaced
Right.
and doesn't have land and got there too late to take advantage of Kentucky and Tennessee, or there was just they just needed to move on. And so they
Right.
come to the Ozarks. And so the Ozarks has an old South culture to begin with. But then after the war, if I look at my home Webster County, the the bulk of the people coming in, while there are still some Southerners, the majority are from Ohio, Illinois, Pennsylvania, uh, Michigan, New York. I mean, they're all Union
Right.
areas,
A lot.
former Union areas. And
Yes.
a lot of times the Southerners went further west.
Right.
If they went anywhere, they went on, a lot of them went on to California. There was a huge Confederate population, ex-Confederate population in San Francisco.
Well, West Plains was solidly Confederate before the war. And they had a rally on the square, and they took 800 men that volunteered, and this was in July before Wilson's Creek. And they took 800 men to Wilson's Creek, and they left some to be bushwhackers. But a lot of the people in this West Plains, Ozark County area are from Tennessee. And a lot of them are from neighboring counties. They don't have anything to do with each other. They're not related, but they just come from the same place. But Tennessee was having a depression, a panic about the year 1830-ish. And so you couldn't buy land, and the banks passed a law that you had to pay for everything in gold. That script was worthless. And so nobody had any gold to spend. And so they wanted land, but Tennessee was civilized already. We already had a president, Andrew Jackson, who built a mansion in Tennessee. And
didn't
that's
like
not,
banks either. He didn't like banks. He wanted
well, he
everything in
didn't.
hard coin.
Yeah. And so most people couldn't have enough hard coin to actually purchase anything. So they looked toward, and as my relatives called it in a letter, the Missouri. One of them said, "I aim to go to the Missouri come fall. I hope that you will go with me." This was to his brother-in-law. So they came here because they wanted land. They wanted to be isolated, I think, and they didn't have much money, but they did have a lot of skills. And so I think that a huge amount of our settlement was Scots-Irish people. And that's in my family on all four sides.
Even the Germans were Scots-Irish amongst them.
Yeah.
It's really funny to look, and I know we're getting off of language here, but it's something that's fascinating to me is when the Germans come and the Scots-Irish come, other than they know they came from some place they really didn't like, they shed that identity and become Americans before there's an America.
Right.
Right. And it's so you've got at least two waves of immigration prior to 1900.
Right.
And then you have another wave of immigration with mining, with let's say pre and early industrialization,
Right.
because the Ozarks was always underpriced compared to the rest of the country. And
Well, the two
those people
waves
contribute to the language too.
Yeah. The two waves that you're talking about would happen in 1700 to 1770. And that was more of the people who we call Scots-Irish, because they had lived in Scotland. And for one reason or another, they were moved to Northern Ireland, which didn't turn out to be a good place for them. So between that time, just 70 years, 200,000 people immigrated from Ulster, which was Northern Ireland, and came to America. And then they distinguished themselves from the later, after the Revolutionary War, as just the plain Irish. That's where this Scots-Irish comes in. No, I'm not Irish.
Well, they're vastly different. Your Scots-Irish are primarily Protestant, one version or another. They're whether it's Anglican or Presbyterian or Huguenot or Calvinist, they're which I guess some of that's the same, doublespeak.
They're Protestant.
Yeah. And yeah, the famine Irish come later.
Right.
Which really doesn't have a big effect on the Ozarks. You get some pockets in New Orleans, a large pocket in New Orleans, another large pocket in St. Louis, and occasionally you read in the paper where the town has a couple of Irishmen.
Right. Well, they were in the cities mostly, those Irish, they stayed.
There are a few out here, but not many.
Yeah. Well, the ones that are my ancestors, and a lot of people, Scots-Irish, they tended to land in Pennsylvania and stay there or somewhere close for a while. And then they would go down the Great Wagon Road. And depending on if you wanted to turn off and go into Tennessee, which was Davy Crockett and Daniel Boone country, you could do that, or you could keep going south. And one of my families ended up in Mecklenburg, North Carolina, and that was a hotbed of Revolutionary War thinking, because it was a county that was full of Scots-Irish people, and they didn't like the British anyway. And they were one of the first to declare their independence as a county from Britain.
So,
and then they moved to Tennessee.
Describe for the listener here, because we've thrown the term the Great Wagon Road around on this podcast 2 or 3 times. Basically, when you open up the Pennsylvania frontier, it's a passageway down the Appalachians.
Right.
And take it from there. Where does it end up?
Like I said, you could take a spur off into Tennessee and Kentucky, and then lots of people stopped along the way, and they stayed for just a little while, like in Virginia, and then they went down, and they just kept going south. And so you could jump off that trail anywhere you wanted to, but a lot of them came to North Carolina, and then they were the ones that went to Tennessee after North Carolina because it got too crowded. So it's just the main thoroughfare. I mean, it was not any highway or anything. It was rough going, but it was the path that they had made to go from Pennsylvania down to North Carolina and other southern states. And my family left Pennsylvania because of the French and Indian War. They were right on the Governor Penn, William Penn, decided to put a lot of Irish people, Anglo-Scots, on the frontier of Pennsylvania because, first of all, they could fight, and secondly, he didn't really like them all that much. So he thought they would be good to be out there and try to take care of the Indian problem. Well, they got sick of that after a while, and I had several people in my family that were scalped and kidnapped and, all kinds of things. And they said, Pennsylvania's not for us, we're leaving. And so Pennsylvania was not welcoming.
Outside of Pittsburgh, you don't think of, or Philly, you don't think of Pennsylvania being rough. But I guess it was.
Oh, yeah. That is where the French and Indian War actually, a lot of it started because they were encroaching. The white people were encroaching on the Indian lands.
Yeah.
And they didn't like that.
So if we take the French and Indian War, which is the 1760s, we know your people landed in Howell County in the 1830s. And then what's that language look like?
Well, it's a mixture. They already were speaking a type of English because most people in Ulster they spoke English. They didn't ever speak Irish. That's one thing, one reason why they're called their own little group of people. They didn't
Well, culturally, they
assimilate into.
have nothing in common with the native Irish, and that
No,
was design.
right. No, they had nothing in common, and that was one of the reasons why they left to go to America. My family, just one of them wrote, um, "We I can see no future here for our family." And they came over in 1717 and landed in Pennsylvania. And then they started going down the Great Wagon Road and finally ended up in North Carolina. And that was about 1760 something, right before the Revolutionary War. And they were in the Revolutionary War. They were soldiers and,
Hmm.
helpers. And so then after that, some of them decided that that was too crowded. If you see a neighbor's chimney smoke or hear their dog bark or the rooster crow, you're too close. And I think
It
that's what,
sounds like the Dillard song, "The Whole World Round."
yeah,
I heard my neighbor's axe upon the hill. It's time to go.
yeah. And that's kind of like they were. And so they all just moved off, the Martin family and the Hawkins family, and they ended up just miles from each other. And so they're both my ancestors.
Well, so is there any survival of anything they said? Do you have, I know you've studied the language and it's more, recently you've really gotten serious about it, but do you have any letters or anything that you can point to?
Yes, I have letters about the Martin family, and it's where Samuel Martin was writing to his brother-in-law. We plan to go to the Missouri. And I mean, other than the script being extremely fancy and hard to read, it reads just like, English. So
Right.
they were real speakers of English when they came.
Well, to write, I mean, culturally, you have a couple of generations of illiteracy right in the middle, and it can really play hell on the language and on
Mhm.
the history of the family.
Right.
Because honestly, after 25 years, no one remembers anything correctly.
Right.
Uh,
I think they probably spoke differently than their, descendants did who came to Missouri, the way
mhm.
they eventually spoke. I think it was a totally different thing, and
I
it kind of morphed here.
well, I really think there's probably a huge difference in language from the Ozarkian uh, man or woman pre-Civil War versus the Ozarkian man and woman 1880 as a
Uh-huh.
whole. Now,
Right.
obviously, there are more remote sections where that language survives.
Right.
Why don't you
And
take us through some
okay.
of those survivals
All
and
right.
tell us where they came from? Because,
Okay.
and I'm going to say a little plug right here. If you have a chance, get the book Down in the Holler by Vance Randolph. I think parts of it be online where you can look at it, because
Probably.
In the Holler is called a Gallery of Ozark Folk Speech, and it gives you how, not only how verbiage is used, but words and uh, where they come from. It's kind of fascinating to read. There's also
Mhm.
a chapter on taboo and euphemism, and it's mainly
Uh-huh.
sex. And
Right.
then there's one on sayings and wisecracks. It's pretty funny.
Yeah. Superstitions are always a big one,
Hmm.
big topic. Well, one thing I think about our accents that we have now, did you notice I said our
Hmm.
accents? Yeah,
ARE.
that's,
So you
yep,
said it correctly.
that's our. But um, we tend to drawl a lot of words,
Hmm.
and I do that as much as anybody. The first time I ever heard myself talking on a recording, I was shocked because I sounded Southern totally, and I didn't
Hmm.
think I sounded that way. But we drawl our words, and they're musical. I've heard the language of the Ozarks described as musical because we don't just say, hi. That mountain was high. We say, hi. And you can hear that lilt in it. And there's so many words that are like that. Right, right. You're right, right. Eight. If you were from somewhere else, you would not put that musicality into it. Light, 9. They're one-syllable words that we kind of stretch into a two-syllable musical drawl. And we also have the rhotic R. Now, the rhotic R means anytime you see an R in a word, you're going to say it, and you're going to say it hard. And it was kind of a lower class thing to do. The Northerners and the Southeast plantation owners, they tried to talk like English people, real from England, and they would drop their R's. And it was a thing to show that you were educated. But by the time we got to Missouri, we put R's in everything. Like we say, winder and yeller, feller, and those are words that don't even have R's in them. And wash and mirror is one of my favorites because you can hear every R in there, and it's just so much different than car, car,
Yeah.
bar, mother, she's my mother. And some of the things that you hear on the North and East Coast. And double modals, that's another thing. That's a helping word like might, but we don't stop at one. We say mighta or mighta coulda. That's how they used to talk. Well, I mighta coulda done that, but I just didn't feel like it.
Yeah.
And coulda, shoulda. Well, you coulda, shoulda done it. Done. There's another one that will never go away ever. And then there's one that's coulda, shoulda, woulda. That's the big modal, Well, I coulda, shoulda, would've if I could've. And so those are some of the things that distinguish the accent of us now. And we don't say G's on the end of ing words. Like, I never say swimming. I'm going swimming. I just say swimming.
Yeah.
And he was laughing and they were singing. I think that's pretty much a universal Ozark thing. And some of our words came directly from Shakespeare and Chaucer and Middle English, Old and Middle English, especially when Shakespeare started writing. Et and heard. I heard it. Are you
Heard it.
deaf? No, I didn't hear it. Chimbley, plum, throwed. There's the instead of through, they just stick an ed on throw. So there's throwed and growed. My goodness, you've growed an inch.
Which 400 years ago was grammatically correct.
Yes.
Let's
yeah,
yes. Because if you think about growed or
right,
and it's not one that I've heard that done to, but it's an even older form of English.
Right. Well, there's so many words in our language that are hard for little kids to understand, and they say ed on the end of everything.
Mm-hmm.
And so you have to teach them, no, it's not throwed, it's through. And that I taught first grade for a while, and that was something that we worked on quite a bit. Puke is an old English word, and afeared. Now that was one that was used very much in the Ozarks. Afeared.
I'm afeared of that.
Yeah, and astonished instead of astonished. Well, I was right astonished about that, and becomed. He becomes my best friend. Hurted. I hurted myself. And some other words that came from that era that stayed in the language of the people who settled here. Accused, critic, courtship, and hint, and elbow, of all things. And
Elbow.
yeah, elbow came from England. And I make up a test for people whenever I do my show, and it's a matching test to see if people know what some of these words are, like shivery. Do you know that word, shivery?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I've been with a couple of them.
Okay. Well, that's on the wedding night, as you know, where you decide to go to the couple's home because that's where they usually went. They didn't go on a honeymoon. And they would do all kinds of honor things to the poor couple. And they would take out shotguns and cowbells and make a lot of noise. And they would have the groom ride on a rail. And they would throw the bride in a pond to cool her off. And they would put salt or meal in the bed while they were doing that. And they also took out some of the bed slats or loosened the rope ties and just anything they could think of. And I finally found an origin of this, and it's French. And it was done in the very old French days because it was to show that you did not approve of the marriage. If, like, say, an older man married a much younger woman, or a divorced woman married someone, if people they didn't like that, they chiveried. And then when it came here, they did people they do like, and you had to give them candy here to make them go away. So my mother and father-in-law were chiveried. And then there's some more words. A whoopin', I'm going to give you a whoopin', thrashing. And city slicker, that's a ferner.
How old is that?
Which one, ferner?
Slicker.
Well, I think it's relatively newer because it is when somebody from the city, the big city, St. Louis, wherever, came into this area, and they would call them a foreigner.
But
That may be one that actually originated here in the Ozarks.
The city slicker part, though, what's the slicker refer to? Does that refer to their clothing? Like their jacket?
They're liable to cheat you. They're going to slicker you. So you don't trust city people.
No.
One of the words that I have on this is slickered. I got slickered by that man. That's conned.
Okay.
Oh, and here's one I love. If you're constipated, you take loosening weed. You go out and you find loosening weed, and it's some kind of herb or something that you can use. But I love that loosening weed. And it was often given by the granny woman who lived around the area. Now, she was the one, usually older, and she would birth all the babies. They would go get the granny woman to do that. And she was the medical help until you could get a doctor. And at first, they didn't even have doctors. So the granny woman was really heavily relied on. She knew all the herbs to give everybody. She knew the superstitions. If you had hemorrhoids, you were supposed to go find a stump that had water in it, and you were supposed to soak in it. That was one of the remedies for hemorrhoids.
Stump water. Stump water is, it's lucky that turpentine ever got off the ground as a cure-all with all the benefits of stump water.
Isn't that the truth?
One thing let's unpack that a little bit, because I call people foreigners all the time.
Yeah.
And we're just overrun with them some days.
Yes.
Worse than skeeters. And that's tongue in cheek to you foreigners out here. If you're on this podcast, you're trying to assimilate and learn the right way. So kudos to you. But most foreigners are just ignorant. Foreigners, sorry. I don't want to malign anybody coming here from another country, but so A foreigner doesn't mean someone from another country. It means someone not from the Ozarks.
It could be anybody.
Right. And my grandmother once said, she was talking about a man who had committed some crime, and she said he just up and left the country.
Up and left.
And that meant he ended up in like Berry County.
Yeah. Well, not too far, but up and left.
Yeah. He didn't leave the United States. He just left Shannon County.
And the word mind is great because you can say it like, remember, mind what I told you. Or listen, mind what I said. Mind like a warning. Now, you mind what I told you about going down to the woods at night. And it also means a desire. I've got a mind to go into town and buy me some new clothes or something. So I like that mind to. And cold shoulder, that's one of my favorites. That came all the way from England. To give somebody the cold shoulder, is to want them to go away. You don't want them just to hang around. And where it came from was back in England when someone was there at a party that you didn't really want there. You gave them the cold piece of meat and the worst piece of meat. So they served the cold shoulder to those people. And they were supposed to kind of get an idea, well, we're not really welcome in this particular place. And let's see. Oh, cipher. That's a good one. To add and subtract. Ciphering. They used to have cipher contests at the local schools to see who could do what, and then they'd have picnics on the ground. Anything that they could do for a little entertainment was good. And Jillikens is one of my favorites because some people do know that and some people don't. And what Jillikens means is it's so far away that you can't get there from here. It's one of those places. And I had a few relatives that lived in the Jillikens, and the Martins, they had to go down a creek bed that doubled as a road. So when the water got up, they couldn't get out. And they had a cemetery, the Martin Cemetery, right by them. And people from across the river, when the creek was up, they couldn't come and bury them. So they'd have to float them over on a boat to get to the graveyard. So that's the Jillikens. And there are still a lot of Jillikens in Missouri.
Yeah, I've maybe told this story before, but my father used to get people in his 1976 two-tone Chevrolet Blazer 4-wheel drive. And I've seen him, cigarette hanging out of the corner of his mouth, put it down in 4-wheel drive and says, well, let's just go into the wild woolly Ozarks, folks. And that's how the podcast got named.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah.
And, but woolly, that was a real common phrase among like my grandmother's generation. Right. If something was woolly, it was bad. It was tough. It was rough. Right. It was intractable. It was, right. It was too woolly to do anything with.
Right. And another one I like is fractious.
Go ahead. Fractious? Yeah.
Yeah. My wife is so fractious. She just, she won't agree with me on anything. So, and one of the first sayings I actually learned, I loved because it fits my husband really well. And he is so stubborn. If you threw him in the creek, he would float upstream. And that's just commenting on his contrariness.
Good for him. Well, one of the things I've wanted to ask is because you taught in a rural area most of your time when you were teaching. What's the funniest thing that is in keeping with our old Ozarks language that a kid ever came out and said?
Well, there was one little boy that I couldn't understand him. He was so Ozarkian, and he had a little bit of a speech impediment too. And when he'd come up to talk to me, I'd have to turn to the other kids and say, what did he say? So that's one thing, but I think "I ain't got no pencil" was the very first thing that I thought, "Wow, they are really into some old language," and all that verbiage, like, um, "it were," just, everything. My husband totally talks like that now, everything. I done it, he done it, and, that's how all of his friends talk, and so I don't know about language that shocked me, except kind of on a daily basis, somebody would say something, and they would say, "I done that," and I'd say, "Oh, you did that?" Trying to show them, this is the right way to say it. I wasn't a stickler, but I knew that they needed to know how to speak in standard American English. And we've had kids from our school go on to Cleveland Clinic, Harvard, and so they had to have a language that was not Ozarks completely. So that's what I was trying to get them ready for. And doings, can you come to our doings on Saturday night? Oh,
Well, I'd
ain't.
be proud to.
Ain't is one that you just can't get rid of it. There's no getting rid of it in the Ozarks. And
And
there's
you
also
know the older version of ain't is hain't.
yes, yes, and then haint also is a ghost.
Right.
Haint,
Right.
the haints will be out there. And we always say Ozarkers say, "That one there," not that one, but that one there. And also we use the phrase 4011, 4011, I've told you 4011 times, and holler, of course, and crick.
Well, do we know the origin of 4011?
No.
Is it some it's probably some long lost cultural reference that
Yeah, probably so. I got recently, just the night before last, got on the American English regional dictionary,
Mhm.
and it's supposed to have some of the origins of Ozark words, which ones are truly Ozark and which ones aren't. So I'm interested to get into that. Shuck, that's what you do to your corn and your peas. And sass, don't sass me. You'll get a whooping. And what's a hog molly?
well, it's a fish if I
Uh-huh.
recall.
Yeah. And
And
have you ever had poke salad?
yes, I had poke and lamb's quarters the other night.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah,
With
poke salad.
I'll tell you the best way to do that poke, and we'll just give us poke recipe right here.
Yeah.
Folks, listen to Uncle Champ right now. If you've got if you've got your bacon and you fry it up, and I use a wok because it's simple. Now you have to boil your poke and your lamb's quarters at least twice, or you'll give diarrhea to the whole countryside. So boil them and drain them. But
Right.
then when you get your bacon fried, take your bacon out. You have your grease right there. Cut your radishes up and put your radishes in the grease with the onions, with your first onions. And then add your poke back in, stir it up, put your green onions in.
Right.
Sorry, but uh, I was going to do a whole poke salad episode, and I got really afraid if I didn't get somebody on that knew more than I
That
did,
you
I'd
knew.
poison somebody.
There's
So,
probably somebody around here. I mean, there's several uh, women and men that are kind of well known for um, living in the woods and
yeah.
eating from the land, and they know just what you can eat, what you can't.
Well,
This one I like.
we put poke and lamb's quarters up in the freezer so we'd have it.
Yeah,
My dad
you have to
loved
get
it.
them. Do you get them when they're little,
Hmm.
or do you let them grow a while?
You can do it both ways. I honestly think you get a better product if you can get them under 8 inches tall before the leaves get real pointy
Right.
and before it makes any berry. One time in my college years, I made supper for my friends, and we had squirrels and rabbits and groundhog, and I made wild greens, and I had a salad, and I had fresh stuff out of the garden and everything. They're all out here. And everybody experienced a clean out on aisle 7 because I only boiled those greens once. And everybody thought they were
Yeah.
delicious because lamb's quarter in particular has a mushroomy taste to it that
Mhm.
I think is even better than spinach.
I have
And
seen where you
and so
boil
I've always
poke.
been really cautious since that.
Yes. I've seen where you boil it 3 times,
I've
poke.
always done it twice if you do it and let it steep and then drain it and wash it.
Right,
Washing it
right.
makes a big difference.
Oh, and ladies, ladies couldn't curse, so they had these words that they could say, and
Oh,
one was Landigoshen. Have you heard that one?
yeah,
That's from the Bible, Goshen, and
yeah.
instead of I swear, they'll say, "I'll swan,"
I'll
'cause
swan,
it
yeah.
was not nice to say the word swear, just even the word swear, and going to Bible things, this is one I love. I heard it on a tape. I used to have my kids tape older people to see how they talked, and then we'd listen to it in class, and he said, "We was poor as Job's turkey,"
Oh,
and
yeah, I've heard that one.
oh, well, good, because a lot of people haven't. You have to explain, well, Job had nothing, so and it goes along with Job's turkey was so poor, he if he stood up, he had to lean against a fence post,
Yeah.
and so there's
So
a lot of
my
Bible.
my one grandmother who came from Shannon County, she had a pretty good knowledge of old words. My other grandmother had the sayings. And not that the other one didn't, but it was more sayings. So,
Yeah.
we have enough for Coxey's army, enough food for Coxey's army, and Coxey led the army, the poor people's army, and then as many got more than Carter's got oats or Carter's got pills,
Carter's got pills.
and, uh, oh, I just had one on the tip of my tongue and I lost it, but Hazel Dugan had some dandies, and, can't even think about it, but, one I was gonna ask you if you'd ever heard of. My other grandmother said something described things being hot, as that was
Hot.
hotter than Blixen.
Then what?
Than Blixen.
No, I haven't heard that. That sounds
Blixen, just like the reindeer.
Oh, Blitzen. That
And
sounds like a really old saying.
so this is probably my first old-timey word experience. I said, "What is Blixen?" And she said, "I don't really know."
Yeah.
And so we got the dictionary and looked it up, and it's the stuff that rises up on slag when you're, smelting
Oh,
or melting metal.
right. Blacksmith.
Well, or I
Okay.
think more just yeah, could be. I
Yeah.
don't know exactly the context of it, but
Yeah.
so
Yeah. The older people come up with things and are used to, and you would just be, what? Well, to think there's several different Ozarks words. Reckon, and
yeah,
people still say that.
reconnoiter.
Or, yeah, reconnoiter. I got to reconnoiter and see where I am here.
Well, I think
Ponder.
reckon is reckon a corruption of reconnoiter?
I don't know which came first, the reckon or the reconnoiter. I just
Well,
don't know.
reckon and reckoning, there's a reckoning, which means
Yes,
something has happened,
right.
but I reckon is gotta be a difference in tense.
Yeah. Well, it's like I think this, I'm pretty sure about it. I reckon that
Yeah.
and ponder and study. I'll study on it for a moment.
Yeah, or puzzle. Let me puzzle this out.
Yes, yes. And ruminate. Have you ever heard anybody say ruminate?
Percolate. That's a new one with the percolator with the stovetop percolator. People would percolate on stuff.
Yeah. That's funny. And we have a lot of sayings that go with dogs, and they've come from everywhere. And these are ones that we still say. Have you ever said, I'm sick as a dog or tired as a dog? I don't know why dogs get the rap of that, but they do. Or you're like a dog with a bone. I've been told that by my husband. He said,
well, dogs sleep a lot, and dogs make a mess when they puke, and you really don't take a dog's bone away from it. So all of them are pretty much true to life, I think.
Yeah. And in the doghouse, you don't want to be there.
Mm-hmm.
And the tail's wagging the dog here,
mm-hmm.
which means, the minor thing is dominating over what's really important. All bark, no bite. I've heard that all my life.
Yeah.
And mean as a junkyard dog. And of course, the hair of the dog, that's pretty popular everywhere.
Yeah.
Which means if you get drunk on something, you need to wake up the next morning for a hangover and drink a little bit more of it, and then it might go away. Have you ever heard
Bloody Mary?
Yeah. Have you ever heard the saying, drunk as Cooter Brown?
Yeah. Randolph wrote about that, and you could never figure out who Cooter Brown actually was.
I have found who it is.
Please
Cooter
tell us.
Brown he was an old man a man that lived right on the Mason-Dixon line during the Civil War. And he did not want to join either army. And so legend has it that he just kept moonshine coming to his house and stayed drunk all the time. And every time one of the armies would ride by, he was too drunk for them to kidnap him and take him along. And so that is drunk as Cooter Brown. Just drunk all the time.
There's several for inebriation. Drunker than a boiled owl.
Oh, boiled owl I've heard, and gloggery. Have you heard that?
Say it again, please.
Gloggery.
Groggery?
Gloggery, yeah.
No, I haven't heard that.
Drunk as 3 lords or 3 judges. Drunk as a skunk.
Yeah.
And I always wondered why as the skunk, but then somebody told me that skunks don't ever walk straight. They always walk kind of zigzaggy. And that's where that came from. And one thing that shows you're from this area is if you want a cool, refreshing drink, do you say soda, pop, or Coke?
Well, if you're up from near St. Louis, you say soda. If you're from the South, you say Coke. It's kind of like Winchester and Frigidaire. It's catch-all. Yeah. And if you're from the hills, you say pop.
Yeah, and then there's Sody Pop. That one was pretty popular around here, too.
Yeah. Well, I can't find what I was looking for.
Oh, Ewans. That's a big one that I still hear a lot. And it comes from, actually, the way they used to talk in England, weans. Have you ever heard anybody say, that's ourn?
Mm-hmm.
And his'n, her'n. And then there's the you all. I try to think of what I say. I say you all, y'all, almost y'all. Well, why don't y'all come in? And then there's all y'all, and all you guys or all you girls. And did we talk about Larapin already?
Yeah. Well, okay. I think we did. I'll tell you what, Danette, let's take a little break. I've got some, I'm going to do a little housekeeping here, and then we're going to come right back, and we're going to get into some stories that you've got on some on the language of the old Ozarks or the old Ozarks. So
okay.
we'll be back here in a minute.
Okay.
Well, folks, I want to thank you for joining us today, and I want to thank you for spending your time with us and listening to our interview with Danette. I want to, at this time, ask you, if you've got your phone out, do me a favor. Especially if you're already on Facebook, go over to Wild and Woolly Ozarks. Check your invites. You may have an invitation from me. Maybe invite a few people who like things about the Ozarks, or people who you know that would appreciate our content. Give us a like and give us that follow. We do appreciate it. Hit share and send it to the home folks. They'll thank you and love you more for it. Also want to thank today's sponsor and give you a message. Hello, inflation got you down? Need help feeding the family? Does the grocery dollar just not stretch as far as it used to? I want to introduce you to one of the best kept secrets in Marshfield, Missouri. That is Penny Pincher's Discount Grocery, 3 blocks due east of the four-way stop. This little store is now voted Marshfield's best grocery store 2 years running. Why, you ask? Well, it's because Penny Pincher's is different. Penny Pincher's buys and resells restaurant-quality food at a discount, including gallon cans, baking mixes, frozen food, and more. Like frozen vegetables? They've got them. Bakery items, meats, seafoods, all are packaged for you by our friendly staff in the licensed and inspected facility. The inventory varies, so the best way to see what is available or to catch the current deal of the day is to follow Penny Pincher's Discount Grocery on Facebook. Or if you're in town, just drop by and see Sarah and the staff. Tell them you heard about it on the Wild and Woolly Ozarks. And if you're brand new, let them give you the tour. So that is Penny Pincher's Discount Grocery, 537 East Jackson, Marshfield, Missouri. Find them on Facebook. To all our friends and neighbors who tell me they love the podcast, suggest topics and guests, thank you kindly. Y'all are the best. Keep those emails and those Facebook messages coming. Also, speaking of coming, Mark Cumming is coming back. Wow, I put coming a whole lot in that. This could go badly really quickly, so I'm going to take a breath here and say Mark Cumming is coming back to talk about Silver Dollar City to answer your questions. So whether you're coming or going or don't know the difference, submit the questions to us at wildandwoollyozarks@gmail.com or reach out on Facebook Messenger where you follow us at Wild and Woolly Ozarks. Now, let's get back to Danette, because heaven knows we need to. Danette?
Yeah. Okay, I wanted to say
you suffered through that. Thank you.
No, that was fine. It was interesting. I might have to go there, although it's a little bit of a drive. Um, there's all kinds of old sayings in the Ozarks where people try to make other people behave or,
Okay.
act like they're supposed to. Like a whistling woman and a crowing hen always come to a bad end. And, that was because women weren't supposed to whistle. That was not considered to be ladylike. And then people would say, well, running around with them, you're dancing with the devil. And you lay down with dogs, you get fleas. And the one I really like is, if you lay down in the middle of the road, don't be surprised when you get run over by a wagon.
It's just kind of common sense.
Yeah, but, that's the things that they would say. Well, do you want to hear a couple of Ozark's old jokes?
You bet. Yeah.
Okay. An old man had a new hearing aid, and he was so proud of it. He would brag that he could hear mouse pissing and cotton. I can hear things, he'd say, that people ain't even said yet. And he just went on, and another man said, well, what kind is it? And he said, about 10 minutes till 3. That's kind of an old one. A Shannon County farmer prayed to the Lord. He says, Lord, I ain't done too bad for today. Ain't passed on no rumors, ain't been greedy nor jealous. I have not taken your name in vain, not once. And I'm thankful, Lord. And then he said, but Lord, I'm fixing to get out of this here bed directly, and I'm going to need a lot of help.
Yeah.
I always like that one. And that's not a good word, directly.
Yeah. Yeah. Directly
Directly
is another word that I picked up on as a little kid.
Yeah.
I'll directly do that.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Which means maybe not, a week, a month.
It's kind of like manana. It's really undefined. It just means later.
Yeah. It can be just about anything. I'll do that directly. Okay, there was a barber who had about 5 chairs in his salon, and most of the time they were full. He would cut people's hair, and they all had gossip going. All the men talked about everybody. And this little old man came in, and he didn't have any hair. He maybe had 2 or 3 hairs on the top of his head, but he always wanted to sit in one of the chairs and listen. And one day it got on the barber's nerves, and he said, I think if you're going to come in here that you should get a haircut and pay a nickel like everybody else. And the little man said, well, okay. So he got up in the chair, and the barber shaved off the 2 or 3 hairs, and then he put lotion all over his head, and he was standing there, and he felt of the little man's head. He said, I believe that you are as smooth as my old lady's butt. And the little man looked up at him and said, well, I believe you're right. It does feel smooth as your lady's butt.
I had a good barber one to tell you. I don't remember now what it was. That's the problem is when you're freestyling, telling these things, and you've got more stories than sense,
It's
like
hard.
I do. They come and they go. I'll tell you, this actually happened. We had this local gentleman, wonderful old gentleman. He owned the bank and the Ford dealership. And like at 18 years old, he'd gotten alopecia. Didn't have a hair on him except one on his cheek. And so there's this new barber in town, and he's friends with him. He said, hey, the barber inspector's coming by. He says, why don't you come by and get a haircut? I'm just going to act like I gave you a complete haircut while he's there. Well, the man didn't have any hair at all. And so he came in and he said, "Oh, you're due here. Good to see you, Mr. Pierce. You're due. Get the chair. It's been a long time. You're looking." He just took his scissors and everything and went over and finally took him to shave that one hair and he got up and he paid him. And barber inspector came in and says, "What the hell's wrong with him? Is he crazy?" So no, he played a little joke on him. So,
yeah, there's a lot of barber stories. They were a source of entertainment.
Yeah, they're a community fixture.
One man told another at work that he thought his wife was pregnant again. He said, "I really thought about shooting myself because we've already got 6 kids." And the other man said, "Well, why did you not go ahead with it?" And he said, "Well, I've got to thinking about the way things have been at my house lately. And, I might be shooting an innocent man if I do that." Or have you heard the saying, "It was such a poor winter that we ate so many coons that when the dog barks, we all run under the house."
Times were so tough, we ate so many rabbits, the kids hopped before they could walk.
Yeah, that's a
The
good
children was born hair-lipped.
See. Oh, this is a silly one. This guy's wife went in, and he was really hungry, and she was kind of tired of cooking everything for him all the time. And he'd ask her for some biscuits. So she got him some dog biscuits, took him home, and he liked them, and he wanted some more. And the next time she went to the store, she bought twice as many dog biscuits, and the clerk noticed that she bought all these, and he said, "Why?" And she said, "My husband, he loves them." And the clerk warned her, "Don't do that. It might make him sick. Those are for dogs." And she kept on coming in and buying twice the amount. And then a couple months later, she came in and only bought half again. And the clerk said, "Is he finally tired of those biscuits?" And she said, "No, he's dead." And the clerk was horrified. And he said, "I told you that he would get sick." And she said, "Oh, no, he just got killed." And the clerk said, "How?" "Well, chasing cars. He got run over." Oh, here's a good one. At the funeral, there was a woman who had been married 3 times. From her first husband, she had 6 children. From her second husband, she had 5. And from her third, she had 7. And the preacher said, "They will be in heaven together now." And a little lady said, "Well, what does that mean? Which husband does it mean?" And she said, "No, I think when he's talking about together, he meant her legs will be together."
There was a story I shared with you earlier, and here's as good a time as any to tell it. There was, and this is funny because these stories have legs. I imagine those stories are those little, more wisecracks, I guess, than anything, are told. I guarantee you they're not just from one place. They've
Right.
had legs. So my father swore this happened in Marshfield, and I've had a dozen more people swear that this story happened in their little town. And a woman pulls up to a service station in a car, and the old man is putting the gas in the car, and he's cleaning off her windshield. And he's a little hard of hearing, and she says to him, she says, "Do you have a restroom?" And he thought she asked if he had his whisk broom. And so he looked around his back pocket. He said, "No, but if you'll pull around the side, I'll take a hose and blow it out." So, my father swore that happened in Marshfield.
Yeah, like mine has.
Mitch James swore it happened in Salem. I had another friend swore it happened in Hartville. So, yeah.
And then there's a few words of advice that I'll leave you with, or these are sayings. more than jokes, but you can be so poor that you don't have a pot to piss in or a window to throw it out of. Have you heard that one?
Oh, yeah.
I like that. Don't kiss your sweetheart at the gate. Love is blind, but the neighbors ain't. Love is like an onion that it tastes delight, but then when the wonder's gone, you may wonder whatever made you bite.
Isn't it funny
Except
that people would think to be cautious about being seen kissing somebody that they were actually courting,
oh yeah,
as opposed to, now if somebody's dating something, you wouldn't think anything about it, but
right. I have a joke that I'll leave you with. There's a man and his wife, and they had a really pretty daughter, and she had a boyfriend, and mom and pa, they were always worried because this guy never worked. He didn't have a job. He was good looking, but he just was a ne'er-do-well. And so they tried to keep them apart from each other. And one night, the little boy and the family comes running in and said, "She's out in the haystack with her boyfriend." And I saw them taking liberties. And so the dad grabbed his shotgun and they ran down there as fast as they could. And he said, "Now, have you left her a harmless little thing?" That was a saying back then. And he said, "Yes, sir." And he said, "Are you sure?" And he said, "Yes." And we're really worried about you marrying her because, you don't have a job and you're worthless pretty much. And he said, "Well, I didn't do anything to her. Sure as I am standing here, as I live and breathe, as sure as you're born, and sure as God made little green apples, and sure as a goose goes barefoot, and sure as a dead man sinks, and sure as snakes crawl, and a lion's or a gun's iron, and a wagon wheels round, and as sure as meat will fry, I didn't take advantage of her." And the old man turned to his wife and said, "I believe that this boy may have a future after all. I think we should see about getting him to be a auctioneer, a preacher, or a politician."
Talked his way out of it, huh?
Yeah.
Well, you've also done some storytelling. And I know you do tell stories from time to time.
Yes.
That's sort of that's something I've done for several years. Take us through that, because truly storytelling is is an art form. Really
Yes.
well done storytelling is an art form. And I don't claim to be good at it, but
Well, me neither, but I try. Yeah. Let's see. I use a lot of family stories because I have a lot of family history. I am fortunate enough to have 2 books written on my ancestry on 2 of the sides that came to the Ozarks. So I have one story about the Civil War in Ozark and Howell County, and it's basically where my 3 times great-grandfather was a Union man, and he was way outnumbered here in West Plains because West Plains at the beginning of the war was totally Confederate. And they had a meeting up in July 1861, and they recruited 800 men for the Confederate Army. Now, when you think about the population of the town being as little as it is, people came from far and wide to join up. And they ended up going to Wilson's Creek, which was the first big battle that was west of the Mississippi, out by Springfield. And they left a lot of the men behind, and 2 of them that they left were my great uncles. And they decided that they would be bushwhackers And of course, they called themselves partisan fighters
Right.
because bushwhacker was not, didn't sound very good. But so I had two Confederate uncles, great uncles. One, well, actually, there were three. One didn't do the bushwhacking. He went off and stayed gone for 4 years and came back at the end of the war and said, I've been a prisoner up at Leavenworth. And I have looked, and there weren't any prisons at Leavenworth, so I don't know where he was. But the two that were bushwhackers, they were pretty notorious. And I talk about how a guy that they grew up with, William Monks, and you've probably heard of him.
Yeah.
He was a captain in the Union Army, and he grew up with all of these people down at Bennett's Bayou. And he went up to Washington, D.C. and told President Lincoln that it was just a den of sin down here and killings and, everything that you could think of. And he said, and it's bushwhackers and it's people I know. I grew up with these people. I know their names. I know what they look like. I know where they hide. I know who will help them. And he said, if you'll just give me help, I'll go and clean that place out. And so Lincoln gave him guns and horses and money and men. And he came back down here in 1863 and he started to clean them out. And he got my two great uncles, shot them both dead. Interesting story. So it's all about how the family came here together in 1838 and they settled in Hawkins Ridge. And then about 1860, something started happening that they all went away, especially the southern-leaning ones. They moved, and they pretty much broke up the family, actually. But there are times that I will run across one of the Confederate Hawkins people that I'm related to, because there's both in town here. There's Union Hawkins and Confederate Hawkins descendants. And they all come from a man that was named Napoleon Bonaparte Hawkins. And that was their grandfather. And so I have a whole thing on how they fought and what they did. And they burned down West Plains twice. And some of the tricks they tried to do, the bushwhackers. And it just tells the story. And one night they meet. I guess my grandfather decided to go down to see what was left of the home place. And his two brothers were out on some kind of patrol. And they met him. And they caught him. And they said, we should kill you, because that's what our orders are, to kill anybody in a Union uniform. And I think he probably said something like, well, I'd appreciate it if you wouldn't. And they stood and talked for a while. And I guess they decided eventually they wouldn't kill him because he was, kin.
Sure.
And so they made him strip down to his long handles. They took his uniform, his horse, his saddle, his gun, his Union kit, everything, and left him out in the woods in his underwear. And they went off and just left him there. But the sad part of that was that uniform got used because one of the brothers put it on to infiltrate a Union camp, and he got caught. And they had William Monks, of all people, come and identify him. And Monks said, I know that you are not this, Don Johnson or whatever fake name he gave. I know that you are Calvin Hawkins and you are a bushwhacker. And if you'll take us to your brother, who we hate even more than you, we will save your life. And he wouldn't do it. And so the next morning they put him on the banks of the Strawberry River and shot him, and he floated away. And to this day, his obituary, you can't find a grave for him, and it says lost at sea or otherwise. So that's one of the stories that I have that I really like, because people don't realize how brutal the Civil War was here.
It
West
was
Plains
horrible.
disappeared completely. It was
Marsh,
300 people.
Marshfield didn't have any like battles, but it was on the way to Springfield. It was far enough removed. It was close to the Wire Road and
Right.
had ample country to hide in, just out of out of range, kind of. And so all the stuff that happens is somebody's going to milk their cows and they get shot, or
Right.
they set somebody's house on fire.
Yeah. Well,
Horrible stuff.
yeah. Well, William Quantrill, he rode around up in northern or the middle of Missouri a lot, and he was one of the worst bushwhackers that there was. And
Yeah.
Bloody Bill Anderson too.
Mhm.
And they would just kill anybody without, thinking about it. And there was a rule in West Plains that the first military man established when he came here, and he said, if you are a Union man or you're a sympathizer, you need to leave now. Leave your home, take a wagon, get out. And so people took him seriously because they started riding up to people's houses and just grabbing the man and saying, come with us. You're going to be a
Right.
Confederate soldier now. And if he refused, they would shoot him just on the spot. They would kill him. There were many times that happened. And even in front of the man's family, things like that. So I've got that story, and I've got slides with it. And I've got the founding of West Plains and how it grew.
Tell us about that a little bit, because one of the things I want people to take away from the podcast is sometimes it's those little stories that don't. The founding of West Plains is probably not known by many people unless they grew
No,
up there, they're outside of Howell County. And
right,
that's kind of a shame because, as I recall, it's kind of a unique little story.
right.
So
Well,
go ahead
okay,
and tell us that,
all right.
and just keep going.
Well, this area was known for the Osage Indians' hunting ground. They did not live here. They lived up by the Osage River in the Missouri, but they would come down here and hunt a lot. And so they were like the first people here. And in when you get to the modern, semi-modern age of 1839, there was a family named Josiah Howell and his wife, and they left Tennessee seeking their fortune, and they came up upon the West Plains area where this Adams man had a shack, and he had cleared 3 or 4 acres of land, and it was right by the town spring. They had a pretty good-sized town spring, and it's under a building now, and it used to be the old library. You could go, and they had plexiglass on it, and you could look down at the real spring, but it was much, more fruitful back in those days. A lot of people lived off of it, and that was something you had to have as water. And they came from Smith County, Tennessee. Josiah was born in 1763, and they came through North Carolina. But the odd thing, this is a little bit different, is they were Quakers. And they got married. Sarah and Josiah got married in 1787, and they set out west. And back then, this area was called Wayne County, because if you look on a map of about 1820, you see a big, huge section at the bottom of it that's just labeled Wayne County.
Right.
And because nobody knew, it hadn't been surveyed, the best that they knew it came from some of the explorers like Schoolcraft and
Yeah,
some other people.
Had it
And he
even
was here.
been surveyed? Was it even surveyed prior to
No,
1840 or something?
no, they had it surveyed, West Plains, in 1857 because they wanted to establish a town.
Sure.
And so that's when they had it. But people that lived out in the country, there were no surveys anywhere.
Yeah.
They just hadn't been done, and they didn't get done until after the war. So they came here. He came with all his children, who are all grown, and they liked the area, and they called it Howell Valley after themselves. And they established a post office with Josephus, the son. And one time they were talking about what to name the town, and they liked Howe Valley, but they made the mistake of asking a circuit judge who was riding in through town, what should we name this place? And I think he gave it about 1 minute thought or less. And he said, well, you're west of Thomasville. Do you know where Thomasville is?
Yep.
Well, it used to be kind of a little bustling town. So he said, you're west of Thomasville, and there's a lot of plains in this area. And I mean, you can go downtown and look, and there's nothing flat about downtown.
No.
It's located between two ridges in a valley. And I've always thought that that was the most terrible name, West Plains, because when people say, oh, are you west in Missouri? No, we're South Central. Oh, well, you must have a lot of plains. No, we've got woods and rocks and hills and everything. So that's how we ended up with West Plains. But Thomas Jefferson Howell, one of the sons, he got elected to the legislature from what was after Wayne, it was Oregon County. They just kept making smaller and smaller counties out of that big piece at the bottom of the state. And he went up to the legislature and persuaded them to make a new county and call it Howell County. And one of the daughters donated land for the square.
Mm-hmm.
And we have a square now that's got the third courthouse. That's an interesting story, how the courthouses got burned down and came and went. And like Lynn Waterhouse said, when she talked about the West Plains explosion, they had a big Gothic courthouse in the square, and it just blew that thing off its foundations, and nobody could go in it, and nobody could work in it. They had to condemn it, and they spent a lot of money.
Yeah,
and
it was frame, wasn't it? It was a frame courthouse.
Yes, it was.
One
And
of the few.
I always thought it was Gothic, and I always thought it looked kind of like a haunted house, but everybody was really proud of it. There was one man that would go back to his office to work in there until the walls shifted and covered up his desk. And he said, okay, I'm not going back anymore. So the courthouse just sat there for a long time. They finally got rid of it. But one of the Howell daughters donated that land, and people started coming from different places and buying land from the Howell family because they pretty much owned whatever was out there. And then in 57, they had the survey, and there was a battle at the courthouse, at one of the courthouses. It was the one that the pigs lived under and the lawyers always complained about. And there was the Battle of West Plains right there at the square, which was February 1862, and 7 Confederates were killed because the Confederates were lounging around by the courthouse, just not doing much of anything. They didn't think there was a Union man in sight, but there was a general from Rolla that decided to come down and check out West Plains. And so they got on all 4 hills that surrounded the lower square, and they had mountain howitzers, and they killed 7 Confederates, and more importantly, they captured their store of rifles. They captured 70 rifles, 70 horses, and just all kinds of things. And now there is actually a marker on the courthouse square that said, in 1862, 7 Confederate soldiers were killed here on the square, which I thought, that's kind of cool. But
For
Thomas
the
Jefferson,
listening people out there, a mountain howitzer is a small brass cannon on a undersized carriage that you can pull with one horse or a team of horses, and you can 3 men or 4 men can lift it off and off of the carriage. It's a way to put in some quick firepower.
right. And that's what they did. They just were up on the hills just blasting away, and they blew the courthouse down. that was before the Gothic courthouse. It was just an old white building.
Yeah.
And
y'all are tough on your courthouses there in Howell County. I'll say
we
that
are.
for you.
We really are. Blow them up and burn them down. The one we have now, though, is nothing's going to happen to it because it is Art Deco, and it is like a piece of granite, and that's what it looks like. It just looks like it's the ugliest thing. I'm sorry, but
Yeah.
it's just not pretty.
Looks like somebody from the Nazi Center of Civic Design
Exactly.
drew it.
It does. And everybody hates it. And they talk about getting a new one, but they never will. And during that battle, Uncle Tommy Jefferson Howell, that's what they called him, he lived a block from the courthouse, and he was still there because he was a Confederate. He was sitting on the porch, and he said all of a sudden he saw Confederates running one way and Union men running the other. And his wife said, you better get out of here because you're not real popular with either side. And for 54 years, well, he was 54 years old. He could not walk without crutches. He had a shriveled up leg, and he was sitting on the porch. And she said, you need to get out of here. And he started running, and he ran all the way out to Powell Valley. Now, this is a man who hadn't walked without a cane or crutches for years and had a shriveled up leg. And he said every time he stopped, he would hear the horses' hoofs coming after him. And he got a few miles more, still heard him. And then he realized he was hearing his heartbeat. And there wasn't anything after him. Wow. But he went all the way to Thayer to his daughters. And they're like, where's your cane? How did you get here? And he said, I don't know. And from that time on, he didn't walk with crutches, and his leg was not shriveled.
Adrenaline?
So, I don't know, but it fixed whatever ailed him for sure.
Huh.
And then after the war, William Monks was in charge of the military law of Howell County, which is like putting a fox in the hen house.
Yeah.
Because he hated all the Confederates. And he was the county judge. He was at times the treasurer. If it wasn't him, it was one of his men. And all the Confederates that would come back, they would levy their taxes on them for 5 years. And they couldn't pay that because they didn't have any money. So their land went to the courthouse steps and was sold. And they had nowhere to go. And Monks and his men would buy up the land. And so they knew who to pick on. And they actually sued one of my great, great, great aunts because supposedly her husband had stolen a rifle of Monks. And she lost. And she begged for a widow's tithe, which was a third of the land, just so she'd have somewhere to go because her husband was dead. And they said, no, get out. So she went to Texas. But it was rough for Confederates after
there was in Douglas County, they did the exact same thing. I haven't found it in Webster County, and the radical Union Republican element after the Civil War is fever pitch in Webster County. I'm sure they took but there were there were only about 100, less than 100 Confederate veterans in Webster County, and there was like 900 Union veterans. So in comparison to like Howell County, it was flipped.
Right.
Now, some of those moved out here later. They were from New Jersey or New York or wherever, and they affiliated. The reason I know about it is because they affiliated with like the veterans organizations, and they're on a roster.
Right.
But they weren't members of like the 24th Missouri or the 46th Missouri or any of those units.
Right. Well, Josiah Howell came here because he owned slaves, and Missouri was a slave state. And that brought a lot of Tennessee people in to this area because of that fact alone. And
Think
so
there were less than 100. There were like 120 enslaved persons in Webster County in 1860.
there were over 100 in Howe County.
Most of those were freed by the time the war came along.
Yeah. Well, they couldn't feed themselves, you know.
Yeah.
They couldn't take care of anybody else, so they just probably let some of the slaves go, and some of them ran off to join the army as well.
Well, yeah. You also have a huge depopulation. So Greene County had 40 people per square mile in 1860. I've heard this. I've never gone and looked it up. I've heard this. And then after the Civil War, Greene County had like 3 people per square mile.
Wow. Yeah.
So it was depopulated by in excess of 90%.
Yeah, that's exactly what happened to Howe County. It was a population, the whole county was 3,000 before the war started, and after the war started, there were 300 people in the whole county left. And then in West Plains, there were about 250, 300 people. And after the war, there was nobody. Nobody lived there. One man said he took a trip through West Plains just to see what was left, and all he saw was a cat. So, and one man said it was a dog, and I'm like, well, cats can take care of themselves better in situations like that. So probably it was a cat.
No kidding.
But after that, after William Monks had his way for 5 years.
Whatever happened to old William Monks anyway?
Well, it's kind of amazing. He opened up a hotel, and there was a traveling preacher named Adam Wright that would come through and stay at the hotel. And Mr. Monks, William, he started talking to this preacher and started coming to church meetings. And he decided he was going to get religion, that he was going to change his whole life. This was in about 1870. And he was going to give himself to God, to the Lord. And when he confessed, he said, I have killed 51 men, and I hope that God will forgive me for that. And he got baptized and everything. And then he and Adam Wright started a church.
Huh.
And it's the church that I go to, First Christian in West Plains. So we had a 100-year celebration not too long ago of one of the parts of the building. And I did a slideshow for the church, and I entitled it From Sinner to Saint.
Mm-hmm.
And I told them all the story about how bad Monks was and then how he reformed. And nobody knew that story. But that church is still, it's still going. I go there. So that's what happened to him. And he died a little old man. And he had totally changed Howe County to Republican. You can hardly get elected on a Democratic ticket in Howe County, even now.
That's pretty much Southwest Missouri.
Yeah.
And county office, I always thought that's kind of dumb because, you want somebody who knows how to assess property or catch people or prosecute criminals or keep the record straight. You don't care what party they are. Competence is rather important. Do you have any good urban legends or ghost stories around Howe County or West Plains?
Well, we have, of course, where the explosion was, the dance hall explosion. That is supposed to be a very ghostly place. And
so I never did really get into that with Lynn, and you always remember what you should have talked about on a podcast after. And as I understand it, there's a building there now, right?
No, there was a building there, and it burned down about more than 5 years ago. Okay. And they put a fence over it. And the West Plains Bank, which is this building right next to it, it's not the bank anymore, but it's owned. They put a picket or a fence where you couldn't see that area, so you can't even see it, and they turned it into kind of a little patio sort of a thing. And so, we'd like to have it as maybe a area that's open to everybody, but it's not. They have some events and things there, but yeah, it was weird that it burned down again.
Has
And it was an
anyone ever
electrical
seen
thing.
anything strange?
Um, at the explosion site,
Yeah.
I don't know. I have not heard of any, but we do have monsters, We have the howler.
The Ozark
Have you?
howler?
Yeah, you know what he is?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. I wrote a story about Jack and the howler because, Jack is a common character in country stories, and he always kind of dim-witted, but he always outsmarts everybody
Yeah.
in the end. And so I put the howler in there, and it ate his brother. But then there's the blue man. He's really tall and blue, and he throws boulders at people. And
Yeah.
I hear more stories about people seeing weird things in the woods that they just can't identify, like the howler supposedly stands up sometimes on 2 legs, but it runs on 4. And people hear it scream at times. And there have been more people down here looking for it on TV shows
Yeah.
and for Bigfoot, of course.
I don't know if
And
you
then,
caught our episode with Vincent Anderson, but he had kind of unpacked the Blue Man a little bit. Also, Caitlin McConnell with Ozarks Alive
right,
did a little work on the Blue Man.
right. Well, I've documented cases. He is the one that there's most of people who actually said and wrote it down or, is in the newspaper or whatever, that they saw this guy. And one person said that he saw the guy's family, that he had a big blue wife and little blue children.
So he wasn't covered with hair, he was just blue.
Well, supposedly he was covered with hair, but it was so dark that it was blue.
Okay.
And so, yeah, people say that they see him every now and then. And I put on my Facebook to text me with ghost stories, and I got a whole bunch of people that answered me. So maybe I could tell you those.
You go right ahead. Yeah.
Another time.
Okay. Well,
yeah, that would be a good thing because
we may have to do a Danette Halloween episode.
Yeah, yeah. Well, there was the Yellow House, and it still is, and it is where a family named Zorn lived. And there was the father and the mother and a lot of kids. And growing up, one of the kids, the son, he was kind of rotten, and he got disinherited from their will, and they had money because there's a Zorn building up on the square that's really fancy that they built and put a newspaper in it. But he got disinherited, and all the other kids got money. And his sister, Daisy, had always wanted a Model T. And so she went out and bought one. And he was so mad at her that he went up to Aid Hardware and got an axe. And Mr. Aid said he never paid for it. That's an aside. But he took that axe and he just chopped that Model T into pieces out in the driveway. And so I always say there's a ghost of a Model T there. But I have talked to people that say that that house is haunted. They use it for a venue for music and things now, and I believe it. My daughter took piano or music lessons there from a teacher. She was a real opera singer, and she told us, she said, "This is the weirdest house I've ever been in. You can hear things, doors shut." She said, I am absolutely sure that it is haunted. And I saw something once there that I didn't really know what it was. I was sitting off in another room while Susanna was having her music lessons. I was really tired and I had my head laid down. on a table, and I looked up, and I saw this kind of a fog in the middle of the room. It was about person size, but it just was a fog, and I just looked at it, and it eventually went away, but I thought, "Golly, that's weird. That's very
Yeah.
scary." Yeah. So, that's why and then I had another close encounter with an alien when I was younger. My husband and I were driving down a road long time ago, like 45 years ago, and we had a light come up over the top of us and shone into the truck, and we just both sat there for a minute, and we were going down the road, and when it went away, I asked Reggie, I said, "What do you think? What was that?" And he said, "I don't know, but when I was pushing on the gas, it wouldn't go. There was nothing, no power." And
Wow.
so it just filled up the whole cab of that truck, and I never say it's an alien because I don't know what it was, but I do know that that happened.
How far were you from Piedmont?
Oh, pretty far away is our
Okay.
ghost of Piedmont. You know, there's a spook lights
That's
at
what I was thinking of.
yeah, the spook lights, people swear that they've seen them,
I've never
but
seen the one at Piedmont. I have seen the one at Hornet
yeah, the Hornet
over by
spook light.
Joplin. Yeah.
And so that house is supposedly haunted, and it is kind of eerie, and a lot of people do say it's haunted.
What house?
The yellow house.
The Yellow House. Okay.
Yeah, that the Zorns lived in.
Any any other further wild tales you wanna ply
Of
us
West
with?
Plains?
Or
Well,
just in general,
there's
the Ozarks?
yeah, there's one tale of, back in several years ago, Tony Aid told me this, so if it's wrong, talk to Tony. But, he said that a very prominent family's son was driving too fast down Aid Hill. Aid Hill is just straight down and straight up, and people got to going too fast, and they didn't know how to drive very well, and they were all the time running into buildings because they couldn't stop. They didn't know how, they forgot, or the brakes failed. But one time, a young teenager came down through there just too fast, and he ran over and killed a mailman right there in the middle of town,
No kidding.
and nothing was ever done or said about it because the family was very prominent. But the ending is this: when that kid grew up to be a little old man, he went across the road to get his mail and got hit and run over by a car.
Oh, no
So,
kidding.
yeah, that's quite a we had the first Forrest Gump. We
Okay.
had a man that actually would run. His name was Jack Brackett Blankenship, and everybody called him Jack Brackett. And he was in the class of probably 54 or 5, and he was on the spectrum. He was autistic,
Uh-huh.
and his father was horrible to him, and he lived with his mother, and finally his father died, and he just was traumatized, and all of his classmates kinda took him under their wing, and he lived in a group home, and they kind of took care of him, and he would always be out downtown, but he started running, and somebody would say, "I'll give you $1 to run to Willow Springs and back," and he'd do it.
Yeah.
He ran all the
Golly.
way to Willow and back. He ran to the World's Fair one time, and, he was always running all over the place, and, you know, Forrest Gump was kind of autistic as well, and so I always say we had the first Forrest Gump here in our town, and one time, there was a guy that was going out through Kansas, and he said to the man he was with, he said, look up there. Look at that guy running. That looks just like Jack Brackett." And the guy said, "No, it couldn't be him. This is the middle of Kansas." And so they pulled up, and it was Jack Brackett. It was him. And they said, "Jack, you want to ride?" He said, "No, you'll only slow me down."
I'll be darned.
He was very eccentric. And Tony told me that he would go into Aid Hardware all the time. He had a watch. He always wore a watch. And he had set it to the watch on at Aid Hardware. Then he'd go out the door, and the West Plains Bank watch was different. And he'd go back and complain to Tony that it was different. And it took him a few minutes to go back and forth. So he never had the right time.
Well,
But he was quite a character.
Sounds
And
like
everybody loved him.
it's the lovely thing about a small town.
Yeah. Yeah, it could have gone the other way, but everyone really felt for him because his father, they think, was a big part of his problem. And then when he died, he lived with his mom. And then after that, he had nowhere to go. So they put him in a nice group home and paid for his stuff, and everybody took care of him. But he was a runner.
Well, Danette, where can people find out more about Howell County, or where can people follow you, or what you're going to be working on next?
Well, I am not really good at being followed because I don't have a website. I haven't been doing this really long, and I have programs that I go around and do. I've got a Revolutionary War that shows the ordinary common person
Mhm.
in the Revolutionary War, not the generals. And I did that at schools, and I go to nursing homes and libraries, and I'll go anywhere, actually. Last week I was downtown as a downtown walk, and I'm on Facebook,
Mhm.
and I need to get better. I do have little business cards finally.
There
So,
you go.
yeah. And I've
Look at
got a
you.
lot of stories that I'm accumulating. And the Civil War, Revolutionary War, Jack and the Howler, Story of West Plains, Edgar Allan Poe. I was asked to do one on him one time for Halloween. So I did. So Danette House at Gmail is pretty much where you can get a hold of me. And I will travel. I will go just about anywhere.
Yeah.
And I'll speak to one group, one person, or 100 people. So,
Think you shared with me, well, I know you did. Um, you shared with me on YouTube where you go into more language like we did today.
yeah,
People
yeah,
can,
right.
I think that's the old language of the Ozarks, same
Yes,
as the
that's my
title of this
talk.
podcast.
Right.
Okay.
And I was down at Mountain Home. They have a really big historical society down there.
Right.
And they invited me last December to come down, and then in April also to come down. And so if anybody has an idea that they want a story on, I pretty much will work on it for them.
Mhm. Well, that's great. And folks, if you like what you heard today, keep an eye on Danette because she will be appearing, and we will be sure to put things out so as they come available, so you can take advantage and maybe go see one of her programs or listen to her stories.
Yeah. Or if you have, like I've done shows for the DAR and the SAR, Daughters and Sons of the American
Right.
Revolution. I know there's chapters of that around. And just anybody who wants a show, most of them, except for my Ozark language, has slides with it.
Uh
So
huh.
I am a kind of a more modern storyteller, but I think, if I've got the pictures and the capability, I might as well show it as well as tell about it.
Don't have a whole bunch of flood lanterns, kerosene fired flood lanterns at the base, and you're not
No,
up there selling patent medicine or anything. So
no.
it's
I just
unfortunate.
say my spiel, and sometimes they pay me and sometimes they don't. And
Yeah,
it's the
I
life of
get
a
it.
storyteller.
Yeah, you're not gonna put four walls and a roof on the place telling tales.
No, no. Meredith was good at that. She
Yes,
could
she
make
was.
money off of her storytelling. And all of the storytellers in West Plains are really getting older now. I mean, I'm 65, and I look at the storytellers and they're in their 80s and they're not, gonna be around forever. So that's one thing why I started this is to pick up and keep going on the history and the stories. I don't want them to die. I want them to be around. And all my relatives that I talk about, I just feel like they're people I know. I've studied them that much.
Yeah.
And I want to keep their memories going.
Well, I think an important thing to do is to get your work out there, your storytelling out there, and make it available because there's just not a lot of places to go to hear storytelling,
Yeah.
except for like here. And that's why I
Right.
say the podcast is the new local regional magazine.
Right. Yeah. And I
And
would love for any of your viewers and listeners to think of somewhere that they would like a storytelling session, maybe at a music party or, something like that.
well,
Churches.
so we're gonna do. We've got a group. We're gonna do Ghost Story Roundtable again this year. We did it last fall,
Okay.
and I don't know. I want to try to do that once a year, but there's another one I'm working on called Ozarks Bull Session. And it's just where we take current topics and we just talk about the Ozarks. Or maybe
Oh,
somebody's got
okay.
a question about the Ozarks. And so
Oh,
I thought
right.
that might be fun to do with 2 or 3 different guests
Yeah.
and
That would
kind
be.
of, yeah.
Well, there's
So,
always something going on in West Plains.
well,
Right now, a lot of buildings are going up. It seems to be like a fairly good time for businesses. Of course, the square is like a ghost town now, but
right.
they have got 90% of their buildings rented out now.
Well, that's
So
positive.
to craft stores and other things. But Walmart just did away with the mom and pops and the
Yeah.
aid store. The aid store is one of the most interesting stories of all.
That was the
How they
hardware store, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I
And
was in there when it was a hardware store, I
yeah,
believe.
I was too. I
Yeah.
used to go look in the windows at Christmas time and it was like um the movie where the little boy looks in at all the toys, and they had a railroad that would go around, and all you had to do was go out and push a button, and it would make that railroad start going around. So that was
Wow.
really exciting for people.
Yeah.
And they did all kinds of promotions. He was a marketing genius, CTA.
Yeah. Well,
So,
we have lived through a pretty interesting time. Uh, I don't know that I would like that as I don't know that I'd like the cholera and diphtheria days
no.
so much, but we've still lived through a pretty interesting time, and it just keeps getting more interesting.
Yes. It's well,
Well,
everybody's so down on society and culture, but it's about like it used to be to me.
yeah.
I've read some of the accounts of the old Ozarks, and there was crime, there were
Oh,
killings,
yeah. Yeah.
and not different than now.
And
People are
horrific
people.
crime,
Yes,
you know. Uh, yeah, there was, and everybody was armed. And,
right.
eh, we had 2 little boys get shot in the library showing a pistol to one another in Marshfield.
Oh no.
Actually, one of them got shot, and the other, anyway. Point is it was a violent, crazy place.
Yeah. Well, it's just the world. I mean, there's a lot of good in it, and there's a lot of bad. And when people say, "Oh, we're just going downhill all the time," I just don't think so. I think we're
No,
as we have always been, just
yeah,
human.
yeah.
Some good, some bad.
Human nature is being what human nature is.
Yeah, and you always blame the next generation, the one
Yeah.
that follows you. My husband's he is so funny about Gen X or, millennials.
Uh,
He's like, "Oh, they don't do anything. They don't work." I'm like, "You don't know that."
yeah. Yeah, that's That's kind of
But
funny.
his dad was like that with our generation, so it's just a
Well,
carryover.
yeah, the World War II generation thought they were tougher than the Vietnam generation, and
Yeah,
know,
yeah, and Vietnam was pretty bad.
yeah, yeah,
There are some, vets that I would like to interview. That one I go to church with was a helicopter. He was a Huey pi well, not Huey, but one of those big helicopters,
a
a
Chinook.
pilot. Yeah, Chinook, that's it, and he would have to land and take on wounded, and
Mm.
he has quite a story. So, I'm gonna work on that. Right now, I'm working on a thing where a lady gave me her grandmother used to keep a diary, and she kept it on a calendar, those little flip calendars that you can
Sure.
write on, and she wants me to kinda transcribe some of it and talk about this lady, and she was so interesting. She talked about how many green beans she canned, and it just really gives you a flavor of somebody that lived in the past, a real simple life.
And something that somebody had no idea that would mean anything to anybody else ever.
Right. Right, exactly.
That's what
There's
I
so
think
many
is so
things.
fascinating about it. Yeah.
And I'm trying to work on my family, and I would like to have some books for them because there's things I want them to know. And I've almost decided that a book is the best way to pass it down
Yeah, I agree.
because, it's in hand. Digital is great if you know what you're doing and it doesn't get lost. But
Yeah,
a
you don't
book,
ever switch computers or yeah,
right, right. So I'm making that for her, and I'm having AI help me.
yeah.
Do you use AI at all?
This software we're on right now uses it some. I have not made the leap. I'm still sort of a Luddite. Uh, and kind of happily a Luddite. I wish I could get rid of my phone.
A Luddite, that is hilarious because we were out on a railroad trip on Amtrak, and we had to get off of the railroad and get on a bus. And we were on with the rest of this group, and they were all Luddites, every one of them. And they looked at us like we were from Mars. And it was just so interesting. And then I was really curious about the Luddite religion.
Well, where were they from?
I think out in the West somewhere. It was Oregon.
Well, the Amish are kind of Luddites. I mean,
Yeah, they're close.
the Mennonites have a Luddite component to
Right.
them.
And we have a big community down here of either Amish or Mennonites, and I'm not sure which. But
Well,
they are really excellent cabinet makers.
within driving distance, you have both.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, yeah. Well, listen, Danette, let's wrap this up here.
Okay.
Let's we got a few little housekeeping things. Danette, I want to thank you for joining us, sharing
Oh, you're welcome.
with us the old language of the Ozarks, and we sure didn't stick to it. We went down a lot of bunny trails, and I liked that.
We did rabbit holes.
Dear
That's what you get
listener,
with me.
dear listener, I want to thank you for joining us. And if you haven't subscribed, followed, joined, or made any other public declaration of support, please do so now. It helps us grow and upgrade the podcast, and it brings exciting episodes like today's visit with Danette House. Also, don't be shy about the shares and likes. We're no longer going to be modest about it. We want them. And so please keep them coming. As always, share it among the home folks. They'll love you more for it. If you're feeling really charitable and want to give us a 5-star review, it helps us grow and improve the podcast. Thank you ahead of time. Also, have a story that's too good to keep? We more than likely want to hear it. Drop us a line at wildandwoollyozarks@gmail.com. Now, I want to tell you, this week we ended up getting a actually, it was late last week. We ended up getting an exciting lead on a story about some Indian artifacts. And there may or may not be a supernatural component to it, or I don't know what else to really say without kind of spoiling it, but that is going to be coming up. So check that out. We did have a 1 week hiatus on the podcast here. I'm going to just had a lot of things happen and could not get another one shot. So thank you for being patient with us. Also, go back and check out our episodes, some of our earlier episodes. There's a great one with Amber Vance. It has a lot to do with murders in the Ozarks. There's also touches on the 3 missing women. There's an anniversary that's just occurred with them. Also, check out our interview with Nancy Simpson, host of the Toll podcast. She has an interview coming out this week, I want to say the 16th of June, with former Greene County Sheriff, now U.S. Marshal Jim Arnott, on Gypsy Rose Blanchard. Is it Gypsy Rose? Yeah, okay. I always get the strips are Gypsy Rose Lee and Gypsy Rose Blanchard. And I don't know now that there's not a gulf between them. I think they're kind of, so yeah, Gypsy, the Munchausen by proxy victim is outliving her best life, and it's just kind of revolting. So be sure and check that out if you're into revulsion. If you have not checked our past episodes or any other new episodes coming, find and follow Wild and Woolly Ozarks where you get your podcasts. I want to thank my producer, Paul Hambrick, one heck of a fellow and a terrific co-creator. I want to thank all of you for sharing and helping us grow our podcast and our Facebook presence. And also, by the way, in light of further legal jargon, the Wild and Woolly Ozarks is a creation of Jared Crawford, the Heron Boys, Paul Hambrick, and myself. Currently, it is old lock, stock, and barrel backline champion Heron III. Any reproduction is unlawful, of course, and just really rude. But if you act nice and don't appear crazy or hostile, chances I'll give you permission. We currently are trading wood stacking 1 hour for 1 minute of product used. So please follow the rules, lest I have to call out the ball daubers and burn your barn down. Well, until next time.
You all be careful, and boys, if you would, please be good to the tourists.
Bye now, folks.
Bye.